ጤና ይስጥልኝ የተከበራችሁ የኢትዮኒውስ ተከታታዮቻችን፣ ይህ ኢትዮ ወቅታዊ የተሰኘው ዝግጅታችን ነው። በዛሬው ዝግጅታችን አቶ ቴዎድሮስ ትርፌ የአማራ ማህበር በአሜሪካ የድርጅቱ ሰብሳቢ ወይም ደግሞ ሊቀመንበር ናቸው። በዛሬው ዕለት የተለያዩ ርዕሰ ጉዳዮችን እያነሳን ውይይት እናደርጋለን። በተለይ ደግሞ የሰብአዊ መብት ድርጅት ከመሆኑ ጋር በተገናኘ በአማራና በሌሎች አካባቢዎችና ሌሎች ማህበረሰቦች ላይ እየደረሰ ያለውን አጠቃላይ የሰብአዊ መብት ጥሰትና በወለጋ አካባቢ እንዲሁም በአዲስ አበባ ምን እየሆነ ነው፣ እንደምን እየተከታተሉ ነው የሚለውን ከቴዎድሮስ ትርፌ ጋር ቆይታ እናደርጋለን። ቴዎድሮስ ትርፌ በአማርኛ ቋንቋ ሀሳቡን ለመግለጽ ሊቸገር ይችላል። ስለዚህም በእንግሊዝኛ ሀሳቡን እንዲገልጽ እና ይህንንም እንደሚያደርግ ከወዲሁ ተመልካቾቻችን እንድትረዱ ጠይቃለሁኝ። በሌማና እያብሬያችሁ ቆያለሁኝ። ከቴዎድሮስ ትርፌ ጋር የምናደርገውን ውይይት እንድትከታተሉ ጋብዛለሁ። ቴዎድሮስ እንግዲህ ቀደም ብዬ I was just informing my audience that you are going to speak in English and we are proceeding our interview in English as well.
Okay.
ቴዎድሮስ, thank you for being our guest for today. And just to begin our interview, would you just give us brief introduction of Amhara Association of America and of course yourself as well?
Of course. First, Bella, thank you for inviting me to your program to discuss important issues facing Amharas in Ethiopia. As you stated, my name is Tewodros Tirfe. I serve as the chairman of the Amhara Association of America, better known as AAA. AAA is an advocacy group based in the United States with supporters throughout the United States and Canada. As an advocacy group, one of the things that we do is we have staff in Ethiopia that investigate, document, and report on human rights atrocities in Ethiopia. And we utilize those reports as the foundation of our advocacy here with the United States government, in Congress, with the White House, international institutions such as the UN and human rights organizations, as well as international media. So we rarely engage, the institutions here in the West to amplify Amhara issues, to provide solutions, when possible, introduce legislation here in Congress. In addition to that, I also serve as president of Federation of Amharas in North America, also known as FANA. FANA is an umbrella organization for 10 Amhara organizations here in the United States. As FANA, we coordinate our activities in response to the political and humanitarian crisis facing Amharas in Ethiopia. So we provide humanitarian services, as we have done, and we continue to do. We also coordinate our advocacy efforts here in the US, in Canada, Europe, New Zealand, and Australia as well. So I'll stop there and respond to any questions that you might have regarding my role in FANA and also in AAA.
Thank you, Teddy, for that brief introduction. You know that in Ethiopia, especially in Oromia region of different areas, there have been reports of mass atrocities committed by different groups. And in another round of ethnic or identity-based attacks, there have been reports of attacks in Wollega areas for the last 2 weeks. In fact, there has been such atrocities for the last 4 years, but in a recent round of attacks, how are you going to explain those attacks in that area? Are you documenting? Are you following what's happening there? Particularly, what's happening against innocents, against civilians?
Bella, I think your audience is well aware of what has been transpiring in the Oromia region. The targeted attacks against Amharas in that area, as many people know, predates the war. In fact, before the war in northern Ethiopia, I would say probably 80 to 85% of the human rights reports that AAA had documented was mainly in that area. predominantly in the Wollega area, East Wollega and Horogudur zones of Oromia region, and also in some and also Mateka, but predominantly in that area. Is when the war started in northern Ethiopia, of course, there were many atrocities that were that occurred within Amhara region that we also documented. But really what we believe is happening based on the evidence that we've collected, a genocide in the Oromia region against Amharas, predates the war, was happening during the war, and is continuing right now, not even though there is a cessation of hostilities in northern Ethiopia. Thousands and thousands of innocent Amharas have been massacred in that area by both the Oromo Liberation Army and the Oromia Special Forces, with support from Oromia regional and federal officials. This is something that we have documented and we have evidence and proof of. And hundreds of thousands of Amharas have been displaced, and hundreds of millions of birr worth of property has been destroyed. So these innocent Amharas are really helpless. In the most recent round of violence that has been happening since November, what we have documented is at least 250 Amharas that we have documented that have been killed, 137 injured, at least 25,000 that have been displaced, and at least 40 that have been abducted, and we fear that they probably have been killed. These attacks are occurring in coordination between, it's a joint operation between the Oromo Liberation Army and the Oromia Special Forces. We have documented and have been voicing for many years that the Oromo Liberation Army has support from the Oromia Special Forces. This was something that had been denied in the past, but has been admitted to recently by the spokesperson for the Oromo Liberation Army, when he said last week that they are conducting joint operation with the Oromia Special Forces. So it is really very disheartening to see innocent civilians being massacred, being killed in the manner that they are being killed by not only the armed groups such as the Oromo Liberation Army, but including state institutions. So what is happening there against Amharas is really a genocide. And it's unfortunate to see that this is being largely ignored. There are organizations such as AAA that is documenting, and other Amhara organizations and medias that trying to bring awareness to this issue. Unfortunately, it is largely being ignored. It is being ignored by the Ethiopian federal government. It is being ignored by the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. It is being ignored by international institutions such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and including the UN, and ignored by Western governments and institutions that had a role in bringing about the cessation of hostilities in northern Ethiopia, such as the United Nations, the European Union, and the United States. The silence is really outstanding, and it's really disappointing. And the message here is clear, that Amhara lives do not matter. They do not. And that it is critically important for Amharas to really take their survival into their own hands. They cannot depend on outside actors. They have to come together, be unified, and ensure their survivability, and that to make sure that other people, that they thrive within their own country. So there is really no, it's really put Amharas in a situation that no one within the Ethiopian institutional system or outside is willing to listen and to help, unfortunately.
What do you think is that happening? Why are the international organizations and even other local organizations ignoring the atrocities that are committed against the civilians, against the people of Amhara in Wollega? What do you think is the cause behind? Why are those organizations remain silent?
So when we talk, for organizations in Ethiopia, unfortunately, the Oromo Prosperity Party is continuing to increase their influence in all institutions in the same manner that the TPLF had done for nearly 30 years. As AAA has stated many times over, what the TPLF used this ethnic apartheid system to try to establish Tigray hegemony. And what Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and his Oromo Prosperity Party are trying to do is use the same system to establish Oromo hegemony. So when it comes to the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, unfortunately, as you know, what we have witnessed is they have been, for the most part, silent on this issue and rarely will issue statements in Amharic or in English. We have met with the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. We have shared with them the reports, and they have said that they will review and investigate and respond, and they have not. And it has gotten to the point to where we have even stopped sharing our reports with them. And we believe it's because of the pressure that they are receiving internally. In fact, we have evidence that the EHRC, the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, will not hire Amharas who advocate on Amhara issues. Amharas that are qualified to work within the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. Within the international institutions, we understand and can sympathize that it is very challenging to investigate human rights atrocities in Ethiopia. We understand that. I mean, we face the same issues. There is telecommunication blackout, that occurs on a regular basis. The media is not allowed into the area. Even Ethiopian journalists are not allowed into the area, certainly not international media. And so we understand the challenges, but we are willing to work with them and collaborate with them. And unfortunately, in some cases we get some breakthroughs, but most times it is very difficult. And I think there is part of the reason is that there is a lot of noise out there from other groups trying to blame Fanos. They seem to be confused, but a big part of it is just laziness and unwillingness to really do deep, thorough investigation. When it comes to Western governments, let's say the United States and the European Union, we're working hard on that. Last week, AAA met with 9 members of Congress specifically on this topic. Well, the week before, with 9 members of Congress specifically on this topic of Amhara genocide in Wollega to try to address this issue. We provided them evidence of what is happening, and we hope to get that addressed, in the next few weeks. And we'll continue to do that. With the State Department, they're completely focused on the cessation of hostilities in northern Ethiopia and have largely ignored this issue. We've met with them, and they said that they're following what's happening in Ethiopia, and that they are concerned, but this is not enough. They need to go beyond being concerned, issuing statements, and also holding government officials and also these armed groups accountable. They have many tools that they can utilize. They can they can sanction individuals within the government institutions that are responsible for this, and also the Oromo Liberation Army. It does not have to be a blanket sanction against a country where innocent people suffer, but the Global Magnitsky Act does provide a mechanism to target individuals that are responsible for this. So as an organization, and really as a larger Amhara community here in the diaspora, we are working very hard. We're working extremely hard on a daily basis to bring this issue to the forefront. We currently have a phone campaign going on right now here in the United States and Canada to contact our members of Congress and also members of Parliament to educate them and to push them to issue statements and introduce legislation. So we're going to continue to work on that. And part of it is really, we have to admit, is part of it is also a failure as a community, right? It's we need more leadership from Amharas in Ethiopia. We have Amharas who serve in Parliament, in the federal Parliament. We have Amharas who serve in the Regional Council of the Amhara region. They need to use that platform to speak up. They need to utilize that platform to speak up. We have an obligation that when innocent people, children and women and elderly are being massacred, are being hacked to death, to speak up. Silence is not an option.
Yeah, Teddy, in these recent attacks against civilians in Wollega areas, there are conflicting stories and reports coming from different groups. And, from the Oromo side, they are saying that the Oromo civilians are targeted by the armed Amharas who are living there and crossing from Amhara region. And the Amharas are saying, no, it's an identity-based attack that are just, coming from OLA and the Oromo regional forces. What do Amhara Association of America reports indicate on this? What can you say on these conflicting stories?
What the extremist Oromo activists are trying to do is use the same strategy that the TPLF activists were doing, trying to blame the victims, which are Amharas in this case, by going after Fanos. So there has been an attempt to defame Fanos, and by doing so, to justify really the massacre of innocent Amharas. That's really the strategy here. What the evidence bears is that the Oromo Liberation Army and the Oromo Special Forces, one a well-organized armed group that has been in existence for nearly 3 decades, and the Oromo Special Forces, which is an arm of the Oromo regional government, in conducting joint operations against Amhara civilians. And the speaker for the Oromo Liberation Army, spokesperson, has clearly stated that in an interview. And then also, we have evidence over the past 4 years to show that the attackers, for the most part, with the Oromo Liberation Army, supported by Oromia regional government officials, and that against a vulnerable group, which is Amharas. Hundreds of thousands have been displaced. You can visibly see it. You can visibly see the people who have been displaced. And if they're lucky enough, that have made it into the Amhara region. I mean, on June 18th, we saw the Tole massacre where over 1,500 Amharas were massacred by the Oromo Liberation Army. No one denies that. And a few weeks later, on July 4th, over 300 Amharas massacred by the Oromo Liberation Army. No one denies that. So the evidence is very, very clear. The evidence of a genocide being committed against Amharas. So this is the evidence and the artifacts that the Amhara Association of America investigators have collected. And in the next 2 weeks, AAA will be submitting a legal case against the Ethiopian government before an international institution. I cannot name that international institution at this time, but when we do that, we will issue a press statement. But we have collected enough evidence to show that what is happening to Amharas is a genocide, and we'll bring that before an international institution.
Talking of the accountability, no one has been accountable. No one has been just held accountable for the crimes that we are referring to for the last many years. And do you think it works this time?
No. Unfortunately, what we are witnessing in Ethiopia is that Amharas within Amhara region are under siege. Today we just received a report that Ethio, the president of the Amhara Student Association and one of the executive committee members, has been arrested in Bahar Dar. There are thousands of Amhara Fanos remain in jail. Anyone within Amhara region who dares to speak up against the ruling party is arrested. Amharas in Addis Ababa are under siege. Amharas in Dera and all over Oromia are under siege. So anyone who dares to speak up against the ruling party and the system is arrested. We will not see any justice. We have already seen, this has already been proven, and we have said it in the past. Think about this. The TPLF, which which attacked the ENDF Northern Command on November 4th, 2020. There will not be any accountability or justice for that. So these ENDF soldiers will not receive any justice. Those that were killed and those that are now dealing with lifelong injuries. The TPLF, which massacred thousands of Amharas when they invaded the Amhara region, and thousands of Afaris when they invaded the Afar region, committed rapes, horrendous crime against the state, destroyed civilian infrastructure such as hospitals and schools. They will not be held accountable. There will not be justice. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed proved that when he released senior TPLF leaders, such as Sibhat Nega, and now has negotiated with them. So we cannot expect justice so long as Abiy and the Prosperity Party are in power. So we don't believe that there will be any justice or accountability for the genocide against Amharas in Oromia region. And we didn't see that in Matakkal either.
Okay, so what do you think is the solution for the for sustainable peace in that area? What do you think is the solution? I mean, if such things are continuing, who is going to be there for civilians? And do you think a peace agreement would work for this area too, as it happened to the northern part of Ethiopia?
So, in the face of all of these atrocities, what this is doing is bringing Amharas together. It has really galvanized Amharas. It has angered a lot of Amharas. There's a lot of emotions. Heightened emotions, disappointment, frustration. But it is also bringing Amharas together. It is unifying us globally. Last weekend, I was in Chicago. The weekend before that, I was in LA. A few weeks before that, I was in San Francisco, in Nevada, and Atlanta. And so there is a grassroots movement here in the diaspora, in the United States, Canada, Europe, Australia, bringing all Amharas together. We are organizing, we are growing, we are bringing our resources together and supporting Amhara cause in Ethiopia. And the same thing is happening in Ethiopia as well. Amharas are frustrated. They're voicing their frustration and their demands. And so the solution really at the end of the day is for Amharas to come together and to fight for their survival. And finally, the end solution is one of two things. One, these areas where Amharas are being attacked, such as East Wollega and Horogorodu and Andera, to be part of the Amhara region, because that is the only way that they can be safe from these attacks by the Oromo Special Forces and the Oromo Liberation Army, or to end this ethnic apartheid system once and for all, so that Amharas can feel safe anywhere in the country within Ethiopia and be equal citizens, and not just Amharas, but all Ethiopians. Amharas were targeted within Welkaite, within Raya by the TPLF, but now that, and also within Talant, but now that Welkaite, Talant, and Raya are being administered by Amharas and within Amhara region, these targeted attacks, at least targeted attacks, ethnic-based targeted attacks, have stopped because the TPLF is no longer administering those areas. Are there arrests by the Amhara regional government against critical voices against the Prosperity Party? Yes, but these mass arrests that were happening, killings and displacements have stopped. So in the end, at least in the short term, we need to have these areas of East Wollega, or Wollega in general, Dera, to return back to the Amhara region under Amhara administration, because that's the only way that we can guarantee the survival of these people in the short term. In the long term, we need to end this ethnic apartheid system so that we can bring security to all Ethiopians and stability to that country and to the region. Or else this country is going to disintegrate. What is happening in Wollega right now? This is the largest crisis. This is the largest crisis Ethiopia is facing. and the federal government is ignoring it. The Amhara regional government officials are ignoring it. The Oromia regional government is enabling it, and the international community is silent. And this has the potential to blow up in everyone's face.
Teddy, thank you. Let's go to the northern part of Ethiopia. There, the federal government and the TPLF has signed an agreement of cessation of hostilities, and it has been almost 2 months, a month and a half since the agreement made. How do you evaluate the implementation of the peace agreement? And there was an issue of inclusivity that was raised during the negotiation time. And you are one of the Amhara negotiation delegation team, and there were 4 people whose names were just public. Do you think this peace agreement would work, and how are you following the implementation process?
Well, so we're following the so-called implementation process very closely because it does have implication on Amharas. We knew for many, since really essentially the war started, that in the end that there would be a negotiation in a war. Even if there's a clear winner and a loser, there's usually some kind of negotiated agreement. And so we had been preparing for that for quite some time. We started the preparation in around November of 2021 to establish a delegation that would represent Amharas. And this was a very long effort to reach out to all Amhara organizations and individuals who are of influence, to speak to them, to communicate with them, to have a consensus and agreement that we should have a delegation to represent Amharas, an independent delegation in any negotiation that would occur to end the war in northern Ethiopia. And there was in part really a broad agreement. We established the Amhara People's Negotiation Delegation. I was one of the delegates. There are 3 other people in Ethiopia: Dr. Desalegn Chane, who is a member of parliament, Dr. Wendessen, and also General Tefera Mamo. We contacted the State Department, the European Union. They are well aware. There was a planned meeting of Obasanjo that did not occur. And the reason why we did this is because we felt that there are key issues, key Amhara issues that only Amharas can negotiate on. These issues include the issues of Welkaite, Talemt, and Raya. For Amharas, these are not just issues of border disputes. This is an issue of identity. What Amharas in that area are saying is that we are Amharas. This is our ancestral land, and we have the right to administer these lands. And we do not want to be under the TPLF and continue to be oppressed and suffer. We want to freely express our identity. The other is the issue of justice and accountability. Because thousands of Amharas were massacred by the TPLF, thousands of Amhara women raped, thousands of, billions of birr worth of civilian infrastructure that was destroyed. So there needs to be justice and accountability and restitution as well. There needs to be investment to come in to rebuild the civilian infrastructure that was destroyed. In addition to that, we wanted to bring the issue of the Amhara genocide in Oromia to the table, because not only do we want to resolve the war in northern Ethiopia, we also want to resolve the genocide that is happening against Amharas in Oromia, not just in Wollega, but also in Dera. And also because this is a key Amhara issue. The other thing that we wanted to bring to the table is also to the ethnic apartheid system. This is something that is critical, that we wanted to bring to the forefront. In addition to that, the other issue that we wanted to bring was the release of the thousands of Amharas that were rounded up and still remain in jail. including at that time, generals such as, Temiskin Desalegn and others that were in jail. As you know, right now, even Mascara Mavera has been rearrested, unfortunately. So that's why we established the Amhara People's Negotiation Delegation. We felt that Amharas should represent themselves and not allow a repeat of what happened in the early 90s. With regards to this, what's happening in northern Ethiopia right now, if we just focus in Tigray, there was an agreement between the TPLF and Abiy's Prosperity Party. From AAA's perspective, we do not believe the negotiation was between the TPLF and the Ethiopian government. It was between the TPLF and the Prosperity Party led by the Oromo Prosperity Party. There was an agreement in Pretoria, amendments, that was agreed to in Nairobi on how the implementation should occur. What we're seeing right now is that the ENDF has not entered Mekelle. It has been nearly 2 months. We have not seen any evidence that the TPLF fighters have demobilized and disarmed. And so what Prime Minister Abiy has done is has given a new life to the TPLF, essentially. It's good that electricity has returned to the Tigray region, and as well as humanitarian services being returned to that to that area, because the Tigray people have suffered, and we're also glad to see that also humanitarian services is now reaching Amharas that were under the TPLF occupation in some parts of the Amhara region, and also in Afar. But what we believe is happening really is, and we had warned about this for quite some time, is a new realignment between the TPLF and the Oromo Prosperity Party. It's just a return of the EPRDF system, but now instead of the TPLF being in charge, it is the Oromo Prosperity Party that is in charge. That is really what is happening right now, what we're witnessing in Ethiopia. So that's why we're not going to witness any or see any justice and accountability. What we are seeing is TPLF that will be allowed to govern that region, to govern that area. They will continue to have fighters because they should have been disarmed and demobilized by now. We don't believe that is going to happen. And there's truly no independent body that is overseeing the implementation. We have not seen any updates. The public is not getting regular updates. The public should be receiving regular updates from independent monitors of the implementation and from the Ethiopian government itself. But that's not what's happening. So we are watching it very closely because the issue of Wolkaite and Raya and Talant are critical to Amhara people, and to ensure that the TPLF does not try to recapture these areas again. And what we are seeing is that the people are preparing for any eventuality if the TPLF was to attempt that.
Do you feel that TPLF would retake those areas, particularly Wolkaite area and Raya areas? As per the agreement, do you think that would happen?
That's the reason why we felt that Amhara should be represented, because the agreement is not clear. We don't know what type of backdoor, behind the door negotiations took place, and but we know that the people in that area, whether it's Wolkaite, Talant, or Raya, are very strong people. These Amhara people have been, are preparing themselves in case the TPLF does attempt to retake this area, and they will have the full support of Amharas, not just within Ethiopia, but globally. And it will start a war again if the TPLF was to attempt that again.
Just a specific question. What is the Amhara negotiation delegation members doing right now? What are you doing as a delegation member?
Sure. As a delegation, we are still active. We are continuing to meet. We are also meeting with international stakeholders as well as Amhara stakeholders regularly. We're appearing on media, and we're acting really right now as a pressure group. And part of the reason being is that, oftentimes in negotiations that are related to war, right? The negotiations can restart again, and we want to make sure that the Amhara People's Negotiation Delegation is active and present and be prepared to represent Amharas when that opportunity presents itself. The war in northern Ethiopia can restart at any time. Ethiopians know that the TPLF cannot be trusted. We all know that. They committed a surprise attack against the ENDF, which is really essentially an attack against the state of Ethiopia itself. They invaded the Amhara and Afar region and committed horrific human rights atrocities. And now they are being given the space and time to regroup so they can reattack. And if the war restarts, again, regardless of how the fighting ends, there will have to be a negotiated settlement. And we want to make sure that the APND is active and present to be able to represent Amhara interests if that opportunity presents itself.
Thank you, Teddy. Just a personal, it seems personal, but I have to ask this question. Do you have a plan to come to Wolkaite and visit your relatives? I know you have a special place for Wolkaite. What do you think? Do you think things are just favorable for you to come to Ethiopia?
The last time I visited Welkaite was in 2002. My grandmother at that time, my father's mother, was alive. She was in Adiremeth. So I went through Gafta, many parts of Welkaite, and went to Adiremeth, and I was grateful to have that opportunity to spend time with her. I was born in Amhara, so Welkaite has a special place in my heart. It is where my family comes from. It is the main reason why I joined the movement. In late 2015. So some people may not be aware, but I joined the Amhara movement in late 2015 when my parents returned from visiting Ethiopia, and my father told me about the Welkaite Amhara Identity Committee, so the Welkaite Maninat Committee. And I knew at that time that what was facing these committee members was either death, torture, or jail. And I wanted to do my part to contribute. All my life, I had heard about Welkaite. That's really all I knew from my family, and not just me, but my siblings, my cousins, whether they're here in the United States, in Europe, or Australia. So for all of us, it has a special place. At this present time, it is. I am not planning to visit Ethiopia. We do stay in touch with our family in Welkaite, but I am waiting for the right opportunity to present itself so I can visit not only Welkaite, but certainly Talamt and Raya. But in addition to that, Wollega. Wollega now has really a special place in my heart. I read all the reports that come out from Ethiopia, from our investigators, and Wollega is something that is very difficult to wrap my mind around when I see the type of violence that is occurring there. So the area of Wollega, East Wollega, Horogurudu, and these places will forever have a special place in my heart. And I hope to visit and meet with the survivors, not just those in the Amhara region, but also those who are in that area right now. And I hope to have an opportunity to visit with them, to talk to them, and to let them know that I am aware of their pain, even though that I didn't go through it, but I have read about their pain, and I will do everything that I can, and not just I, but as AAA, as FANA, as a collective Amhara movement here in the diaspora, to help them recover, so that they can, have really a meaningful life and a hopeful future.
Teddy, those are my questions for this time at least. But do you have anything to add before just we close the interview?
Very quickly, Belai, and this is really a message to the Amhara community. When we established the Amhara Association in 2016, the reason we established it is because we were concerned. We saw the danger, we saw the threat to the Amhara people. And that's why we established AAA. If we were not concerned, if we were not fearful of what was going to happen to Amharas, we would not have established AAA. We've worked hard to bring the Amhara issue to the international arena. And I am extremely proud of the team that has within AAA that have worked, day and night, probably putting in 60 hours a week to do this. I am proud of them. But right now, so we were pessimistic at that time in 2016. Right now, as AAA, as Tewodros Tirfe, we are optimistic about the future of Amharas. And the reason why we are optimistic, Belai, is because Amharas are now informed and educated of what is happening to them and to their people in Ethiopia. Amharas are now finally awakened. Amharas now fully understand why it is critical and important for Amharas to organize. Amharas understand now that it's fully important and critical that they must work together and be unified to survive as a people. We have, in just a few years, in just 6 years, we have seen the Amhara movement grow at a rate that we had not expected when we established AAA in 2016. Not only do we have AAA, we have an umbrella organization here in the United States. We have an umbrella organization in Canada called CASA. We have an umbrella organization in Europe, in Australia, in New Zealand. So there are Amhara organizations now all across the world, including in Ethiopia, working together, collaborating, at a global scale, and also working with Amhara organizations and influencers in Ethiopia. And we have raised millions and millions of dollars and delivered much needed assistance in Ethiopia. For example, by establishing Amhara Emergency Fund, we provided free meals to over 130,000 Amharas that were displaced because of the war in northern Ethiopia and those that were displaced from Wollega. We provided free medical treatment and psychotherapy treatment to over 1,000 Amhara women that were raped by the TPLF militias and gave them each 13,500 birr to start small businesses. And over 80% of these women who had no hope, who had lost hope, who thought they would have no future, have successfully started their small business and are now not only taking care of themselves, but also their families. We hired between what was happening in Metekel a few months ago and also during the war in northern Ethiopia, 50 medical doctors and deployed them across Ethiopia, providing free medical treatment to Amharas that were affected by the war. And they saw over 65,000 patients. This is in just less than 6 years. And so, and many subcommittees have come off of that, and they are providing help to Amharas in Ethiopia. We're bringing visibility to what's happening to Amharas across the world. So Amharas are working together. They're aware, they're awakened, they are informed, they understand their unity is critical. And so that's why, as chairman of the Amhara Association of America, I am optimistic about the future of Amharas because we are taking, the survival of our people into our own hands finally. We're not outsourcing it to any group. We're not dependent on any group. We have finally said that it is up to us to ensure that we survive and we thrive. And that's why, I am optimistic. So what I say to Amharas is, in the face of this genocide, know that as a people, we have accomplished a lot. Of course, we have a lot to do, but we will get through this. We will overcome this. Just look at yourself, Belai. Look at how many Amhara-centric medias that we have right now. 3 years ago, 4 years ago, we didn't have, Ethio News. But now we have Ethio News and many, many more other Amhara-centric medias bringing information to Amharas. and to the to the broader world. This is a service that you are providing in other Amhara medias. So so we are establishing many institutions. So what I say to Amharas is be optimistic about your future. Work hard, be engaged, but be optimistic.
Tewodros Tirfe, chairperson of Amhara Association of America. It was a pleasure to have you as Ethio News's guest. Thank you very much for your time, Teddy.
Well, I thank you for having me on your program today.
የተከበራችሁ ተመልካቾቻችን የኢትዮ ወቅታዊ የዛሬው ዝግጅታችን ይህን ይመስል ነበረ። በላይ ማናዬ ከአማራ ማህበር በአሜሪካ ሰብሳቢ ቴዎድሮስ ትርፌ ጋር ያደረኩት ቆይታ ይህን ይመስል ነበረ። በሌሎች ዝግጅቶች እንገናኛለን። እስከዛው መልካም ጊዜ ይሆንላችሁ።